Hello, every folks, and welcome to another edition of Know Your Units. Today, we're starting off with the Warrior from Tactics Ogre One Vision. Now, why does this matter specifically? Well, truth be told, as I've been going and playing through Unicorn Overlord over and over, it kept bringing me back to the fact that you could do a lot of that, the stuff that you could do with that particular soldier, specifically your soldier units there with the Warriors back in One Vision, and that's what I wanted to talk about here. For those unfamiliar with the One Vision mod, it's basically held up as the other definitive version of Tactics Ogre, where essentially they just went completely nutty with the number of mechanics that you have going on at any given time. And I feel like one of the best ways to show this off is to talk about the basic warrior, the basic soldier, the guy that can do a lot more than their kind of melee specialization would potentially imply. Hi, internet browser. With the FFTA2 soundtrack. Can I help you? Are you having a stroke? Okay, that was weird. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get into it here. So, the Warrior, despite being a melee specialist, is actually more of a, well, equipment specialist. Their skills would imply that they're a melee guy, but they really can be just about anything. And personally, this is how I was running my my basic soldier guy here on my most recent playthrough here, going for sidearms, heavy shield, heavy armor, some dexterity gloves, as well as a ring of alacrity. Now, the reason that I mention this is just to give you an idea over how many doors their kind of wide equipment axis can actually open. If we take a look here, we have access to the full array of fist weapons. Don't worry, I'll show a completely, unlocked save file in a moment. I just wanted to show what's available here. So, the fist weapons in One Vision are one-handed, they can stun, they can poison, they can go and claw MP out of somebody's brain basket. So, there's that. You've got the daggers, which are able to bind or can inflict a silence. Also, two very important tools. And in fact, in terms of daggers, warriors are one of the few that has access to a 100% hit skill in the form of Mighty Strike, which means that something like silence from Silver Point actually can be quite potent in their hands. Same thing for something like guaranteed poison or stun from their claws. Pretty handy stuff. Stuff like the swords wouldn't really rely on that as much. They get access to stagger. They're just kind of more of your basic kind of accuracy and high potential scaling type of option. Meanwhile, we've got the axes with their breach. It's already pretty likely to inflict breach, but if you can guarantee that breach, oh man, you are having a good time. You've got stuff like spears. They've got access to a double hitting ability, meaning that when we have, for example, access to long-range pikes, the long two-handed pikes here, potentially that is a hell of a lot of damage that's being thrown out. They are effectively attacking 4 times rather than 2, just due to the fact that they can hit somebody at really long range with a fairly high-power weapon. For those unfamiliar with One Vision, and I apologize that I'm going to keep kind of hopping back and forth between people that know and don't know, it's a little hard to know who's exactly going to be watching this, so I'm going to try to cover all my bases. It's probably going to end up annoying everybody, but I'm hoping you'll stick with me here. But like, for example, when it comes to something like spears, the reason that this matters is you've got your light one-handed spears for, fighting behind a shield. You got your avoidance and pretty high scaling damage if you manage to get past defenses with this. You've got your heavy pike variants, which are also going to have avoidance, also going to give you a parry bonus. And these are... I should clarify, when I say also, I mean that they are the ones that get the parry bonus. But in their particular case, they're going to hit pretty darn hard, but they don't get that first tile of range, so they're not really going to be counterattacking very much. And then you've also got the spellcasting variants, like this one right here, that's going to give you a mind bonus. And that's potentially going to be useful for, let's say, a debuff caster or somebody that's looking to be a bit more accurate with spells, like, let's say, somebody like a Valkyrie or whatnot. It's a bit more situational. Like, for example, in the case of something like the Silver Spire, I should probably point out that with the way that certain kind of specialized weapons work, something like the Silver Spire has access to a massive undead bonus. It's something that's going to be pretty useful in a lot of cases. So, like, for example, the Silver Spire can potentially still be useful into late game, Palace of the Dead, all of that kind of thing, on a Valkyrie. Like, they're not fighting anything other than undead, and it gives them a casting bonus, so good stuff there. The spell boosting ones aren't that common, but it's there. And then if you wanted the classic kind of like Knight of Lotus era spear with a high damage, 1 to 2 range, and massive scaling, then you have access to your glaives, or your halberds rather, with their overpower bonus, just like the swords. Still gaining a avoidance bonus. They don't get the parry bonus though, but these are going to be more of your kind of direct offensive option. And typically these are something you'd carry more on something like a Terror Knight or what have you. But again, with the double hit from the soldier, and if I call them the soldier, just assume I'm talking about the warrior. I'm used to calling them the soldier. They look like a soldier. They are the soldier to me, but that does mean that it gives them a lot of options. You may notice that I like spears. Yes. All right, carrying on, we've got access to our hammers with their guaranteed stun in their hands, or going for a guaranteed knockback. The guaranteed knockback is always happening with the guaranteed hit anyway, but you know, maybe you just need more knockback in your life. You've got the TP cutting from the 1 HKs. You've got the TP cutting from the 2 HKs. You've got the parrying combat variant of the cudgel category. And additionally, you've got access to whips. Now, whips are also handy in their hand because in this version, whips can attack diagonally and they'll inflict false strike. Again, with that guarantee there, it's a very useful tool, especially in the case of something like right here, where the chain whip is essentially your Castlevania whip, and it's going to give you a undead bonus, you know, being pretty darn useful for hitting stuff at a weird diagonal in cases where other units might not necessarily want to go. Now, on top of this, they are not simply limited to those melee weapons. While their skills are all melee orientated, for the most part, they actually do have other functions as well. So for example, the short bows, again, just kind of generally handy for having access to finishers, having access to a ranged attack. Short bows are generally pretty darn lightweight, easy to carry around, and can give them a nice little opportunist option if they're staying roughly out of range. Or if you wanted to have something with a bit more punch behind it, you've got access to your crossbows, essentially allowing for options like firing with poison, using the poison crossbows, having access to the bolt casters and rail guns for being able to snipe something at long range. I should clarify that these are specifically only able to fire in 4 directions. They can't actually fire diagonally, but they can fire up to 12 range and can fire through many types of material. So potentially this allows them to fire through the terrain. It depends, but like thin walls and things. But yeah, so you have that option there. Basically, I think mechanically it's the same thing as a spear. So like if a spear would be able to shoot through it, they'll be able to hit on the other side. But it tells you when you're firing anyway. Anyway, so yeah, this gives them access to potentially a lot of options. I personally like offhand poison crossbows, but either way, you do you. And then you also have the lobber hand if you wanted to use a one-handed weapon and a lobber, if you wanted to use them as more of an item support, or you have what I've been running with this guy here, which is going to be sidearms. So you've got hobble and slow that are available from these weapons. They can't guarantee these with their skills, but it almost doesn't matter. So why use somebody like this? Well, because if you look at his loadout here, he looks a little bit like this. He's got a heavy Lorica. This is going to be giving him a high amount of vitality, high amount of defense, high amount of health. It's going to leave him a little bit slow, so we went a little lighter on the arm guards, giving him something to boost luck in order to help with hopefully landing some crits with his Wigeli up there, and additionally gives him some additional dexterity, so that's pretty useful there. And a Ring of Alacrity, because he is naturally absolutely awful at accuracy. So he came in with a kind of a archetypal strength kind of guy, and in his case, his accuracy was awful, so again, Ring of Alacrity gives him a good bit of avoidance to make up for the fact that this stuff is not very dodgy. So he ends up becoming semi-dodgy as well as being near perfectly accurate. On top of this, we have a heavy scutum. Now, the shields in One Vision like to have kind of opposite versions. So whereas, for example, the basic shield would give you a parry, it would give you the ability to knock back on hit, and would give you a larger, I think it was a larger health bonus on that one. In this case, it gives you a deflect, it gives you a stun on hit that's guaranteed, and additionally will have a steadfast effect on there. So this guy cannot be knocked backwards or knocked away. And then additionally, as shown before, we've got this sidearm on him, being able to potentially hobble a unit, but giving him a long-range attack. Now, we haven't even covered the skills yet. So let me show you what I have running on him and why. And also, apparently I have a empty slot here. That is weird. I'm not sure why I have that there. This might have been I don't know. This was supposed to be Bash. He also wouldn't have access to Bash yet. Oh, that's because I have a I have a thing active in the background, basically I have the cheat to unlock everything, so that we would be able to show off more stuff, and apparently I forgot to turn it off. Anyway, here was the general gist of how this build worked. So we've got teratology for hitting beast units a bit more. He was having a hard time dealing with griffins, so this was his way to, while he doesn't have beast slayer or anything like that, this does let him hit those units more often, and potentially might make it harder for them to do their thing if they're hobbled. Additionally, we've got Vigorous Attack. Now you may notice, again, he's got no melee weapon, and his shield is basically guaranteed to hit anyway. The reason that he's got this is to actually serve as a support. See, believe it or not, this guy is actually a negotiator. So in his case, he's using Vigorous Attack to boost his allies when he's nearby them, and then he's going and using Opportunist to then get behind the other lines there. So Opportunist gives you access to improved buried treasure, and also gives you the use of flank for 1 round. This kind of mentally, this feels to me like run and gun from XCOM, but effectively what he's doing is just he's able to ignore rampant auras while this is active. So he gets behind rampant auras, and then he goes for shield bashes and recruits. So he basically uses the Wajeli to open up the Vigorous, he drops a Vigorous to support his people, he hits the front line, he uses Opportunist to get past it, and then he uses Recruit to repeatedly talk to everybody there. This is surprisingly useful, seeing as he's fairly bulky, he's fairly evasive, and oftentimes he's able to do a lot with just the stun on the shield bash alone, but the fact that he's able to essentially disable them without disabling their ability to speak means that he's got a lot of opportunities to recruit people to his side. Additionally, he's got jump to help him get out of there. You may have been wondering, wait a minute, wouldn't the slow effect from the other sidearm be more useful? Maybe, in some cases, but in this case, once he hits 100 TP, he's able to use the guaranteed slow from his sidearms to guaranteed slow somebody instead of rolling for a shot. So this means that he's got access to 2 debuffs, one of which is guaranteed now, instead of having a redundant setup. And additionally, if he has any accuracy issues whatsoever, he's got trajectory to improve his odds of hitting. This is basically the same as back attack used to be in the other versions. And then he's got stun ward to prevent himself from being stunned, because that's kind of a bit of a problem for him. And then additionally, he's got bash to be able to knock that back units with his Wajeli there. So potentially, if he knocks a unit back and they get hobbled, they might never reach the fight whatsoever. So this is all just to show that, yeah, when it comes to this guy, they've got a lot of options for being able to be put together. There's a lot of different things that they could potentially be doing. It doesn't necessarily just have to be melee. So now that I've gone and explained all this stuff, let's go into their skills a little bit. So right off the bat, they're one of the first units to get access to Recruit this time around, being able to get this at level 5, which means that you'll basically get it out of the tutorial in a lot of cases. This basically means that any human unit is potentially far less of a threat. They've got access to all the wards, as pretty much everybody does, and then you've got access to Squash. Now, this will either stagger a unit or remove an obstacle. This is very, very useful in a lot of situations, seeing as there's a lot of obstacles that could be in your way, you know, things like boxes or whatnot else. And in fact, this is probably one of my favorite low-key, just kind of it's here, but it's really cool mechanically implementations of a thing in One Vision. Because one of the things I praised Tactics Ogre Reborn for was the fact that you could go and get past a lot of your obstacles just with basic attacks or whatever else. It would spawn cards. It was constantly trying to give you that idea of, like, you know, carving through and carving through. And yes, it did seem a little silly that basically all of the crates got replaced with Resident Evil 4 crates or something. In this case, you still have that same feeling of being able to smash it in one hit. However, only certain units can do it, which is just kind of cool. But yeah, it's also useful for staggering something before you hit them. So if you are, for example, let's say running a a heavy weapon unit, you don't have access to your Mighty Strike at that moment. This gives you a sort of crappier version of that to at least improve your odds of hitting that guy. So very useful. It also does not replace something like a feint. So if you have your back attack and your squash set up, you could potentially essentially have a half-cost version of Mighty Strike without the crit. Yes, it's got some downsides, but it does allow for, let's say, hitting somebody very accurately in the rain. Again, less consistent than the other version, less straightforward, but it's just a nice thing that you can play around with. Trajectory and Opportunist we already went over. Double Strike is pretty obvious. You hit twice with a thing. But again, personally, as far as I see it, long-range pike, double strike is just, it is perfection as far as this ability goes. Now, as far as other weapons, most of your debuff weapons I feel would be better off using something like Mighty Strike, because with Mighty it costs less and it's a guaranteed crit, which will oftentimes do what feels like double damage anyway. But in this case, there are certain things that will make sense to stack. Like if you, for example, take a guaranteed attack with a stun or a breach or something like that, it will always hit. If you take a double strike, both might just miss, and it ends up costing you more. But stuff like, let's say, your katanas and things like that, double strikes with katanas can completely deplete pretty much any finisher unless they've been stacking it up for a long time. So double strike with a 2 HK is really, really strong, allowing you to double remove TP, or double strike with MP claws or something like that. So double strike, again, it's not just always about the damage, but if you do have a tanky unit, you can delete their finishers. If you have a casty unit, you can completely delete their MP with this. It is a very high cost move, but it might be just the thing you're looking for, but just another use case to bear in mind. Then you've got access to Reflect Magic over here. They don't get access to reflect damage, but another thing to potentially consider is that they do have access to those reflection shields. So these are already available earlier on in the game, but these are going to be your spiked and shard shield. These stack. So if, for example, you equip Reflect Magic and you also have Reflect Magic on your shield, they will stack to give you 40% magic reflection. So just something to bear in mind, that you can stack that if you are looking to, for example, give them really low resistance and then just kind of offensively twist that. So that's an option. Additionally, it should be mentioned that a lot of those shields will have additional effects to them. Like the reflection shields, I believe, are just reflect. I don't think those have silence yet. It's the later wards that will have access to silence. What is going on with that browser again? Browser, are we gonna have to have words? Yeah, the weird issue of Chrome just suddenly going nuts. Okay, no, the Shard Shield does actually get silence, and that's going to be guaranteed. So, potentially, using this in combination with the other Reflect Magic could be a great way to weaponize themselves against casters, and then turn off that little faucet of damage when they actually need to. So, either way, another thing to potentially consider there. Additionally, as far as weapon types, again, fists, daggers, 1H swords, 2H swords, axes, spears, hammers, 1HKs, 2HKs, whips, sidearms, bows, crossbows. There's a lot of them. And also, one other benefit of this class is as a trainer. So they obviously get access to a lot of weapons. If you're going to train up as a sword warlock down the road, get them started on their 1HKs, 2HKs, whatever else early. If you're going to go swordmaster, that one's pretty obvious. They got 4 different swords that they can equip as well as daggers. And then additionally, the augments. Every one of these finishers will have a augment to them for the most part at this point. So, like, if I wanted to improve his Frostmourne, I could go give him an augment ice. But on the training side of things, if they are using their finishers a lot, this allows them to get their augment training started early before they ever switch into a caster class down the road. It's not going to be mind-blowing, but it is going to be enough to get that train rolling. And for example, a warrior with something like a whip and augment darkness, as well as Armageddon, which is the final whip finisher, is beyond fucked levels of damage in an AoE. It's one of the strongest things that you can do in One Vision, so just bear that in mind. If you saw any of the One Vision solo run, that was abused extensively to wipe out like 5-6 units at once. Okay. Moving on. Okay, so as far as their racial skills go, they have access to Teratology for dealing with beasts, Draconology for dealing with dragons, Sacrology for dealing with divine, and Orology for dealing with fairies. In the case of fairies, they're going to have a hard time hitting fairies generally due to, well, at long range anyway, just due to them being a bit more dodgy. But either way, these are more for flavor type of stuff. For those that missed it, racial skills are not allowed for the same type as the user in One Vision, and every class will have access to only some of them, because if you end up stacking these up, stuff gets broken very quickly. This is why Anatomy was beyond busted back in the original on PSP, and why it was completely removed in both of the definitive versions. Well, not completely removed. I should mention that Anatomy is still in here, and we'll get to that in a moment. From there, we have Parry, Deflect. I don't know why it's switching over to the other tab like that there. Parry, Deflect, Overpower. They get access to rank 1 of Rampart Aura, up to, I believe they actually get access to rank 2 later. I forget exactly. They get their counter hits, they get bashes, they get jump, they get wade, they get steadfast, though again, heavy shield will do that job for you. Field Alch only goes up to rank 1. So this gives them access to half of the items, but not all of them. They naturally get Tactician, naturally get TP+. If you're running that Armageddon setup from before, or anything that scales damage, always run MP max up. And then, yeah, that's their entire skill list here. The only one that I don't think I covered was, actually, no, we didn't cover Mighty Strike and Vigorous Attack. So for Vigorous, True Strike and Dodge. Both are very potent in One Vision. Both are potentially game changers in their own right. If you have anything remotely tanky and you give it dodge, it's become near invincible. So consider that as a very important tool. It's fairly cheap. It gives you a huge amount of benefit. It's similar to one of the actions that the Swordmaster can do, but they can do it on their off turn, so that's fantastic. And then Mighty Strike, again, it's already been mentioned, but for anybody that missed it, guaranteed crit, cannot be countered, and additionally will guarantee any kind of a secondary effect on a melee weapon specifically. So either way, there's that. Now, one thing I do want to mention. All right, so I mentioned that I would bring this up earlier, so just so you know, one of those combinations that's really, really strong that unfortunately can't be used by the warrior is the old anatomy and recruit combo. Funnily enough, this can be used by skeletons as something like a hoplite or whatever else, but typically racial skills are banned for classes that are, you know, like let's say anatomy would be banned for human-only classes. But something like the hoplite, they can't become, so, you know, they would end up getting access to it. What's funny about this is that, yeah, you'd think you'd be able to go convert this back into the warrior, but unfortunately, as you can see right here, they can't use it. I was sure this was something you could do in at least some point of the mod, but apparently you can't do it anymore. But yeah, just so you know, if you are looking to do the anatomy recruit combo, eventually consider making that unit into a skeleton and then converting them over to a hoplite, because they absolutely can. And it's funny because the hoplite is in many ways kind of, it kind of feels like the skeleton almost evolves the basic soldier in One Vision, which is just kind of an interesting little thing to think about here. Okay, so let's go ahead and hop over to the next save file real quick just to show some other options. Okay, so let's go ahead and just show the kinds of weirdness that you can get off of something like their equipment access. I'm not going to redo their skills because I'm kind of running short on time right now, but for example, if you wanted to use the Scout Vest to have access to Swiftfoot and jump at the same time, have avoidance that's literally 100 points higher than everything else, have them serve as an item support, and let's say use something like double attack with a Crissaegrim as well as a instill item, like for example, having access to Field Alk 1 would give them access to the Crystallos items, which gives them an instill, which means that this Crissaegrim, which normally hits twice, will now effectively hit 6 times, being able to hit twice naturally by itself, and it's being swung twice, and you're getting an instill on top of that for every one of those attacks. So now he's able to swing 6 times in a round. Going over some of the other weapons here, I mean, something like the God Hand is mostly just kind of funny. If you wanted them to be able to fly, this gives them access to the Talons. Let's say if you wanted to have those constant explosive punchback punches, the the Hulk hands are really useful for this. This is actually particularly funny with Mighty Strike, because it just makes them like double explode as they're flying backwards. These are not the greatest weapon in the world, but just the fact that they explode on punch is very entertaining. When it comes to the daggers, again, these were always really good in their hands already, just due to the fact that Bind has something like a 10% chance to trigger naturally. But in their hands, they can up that to 100%, which means that for the low cost of 60 TP, they can completely wipe a unit out of the fight by binding them to the ground. So that's just nice. It just basically hamstrings them. It's one of their most useful things. Like, honestly, Dagger and Shield, don't sleep on that. It's surprisingly good. Okay. For the 1H swords, bear in mind that one-handed swords also get access to two-handed variants. So this means that you can have essentially two-handed sword power using the finisher list of the one-hander. So if you wanted them to have, let's say you wanted them to have the Stinky set, they would have access to something like the Waster and the rest of the Stinky equipment. If you wanted them to be a weird guaranteed crit Dragoon, you have access to that as well. Though I will mention, as far as the Dragoon option goes, it's it wouldn't stack with their Mighty Strike, so it's kind of pointless there. But still, I don't know why I'm giving him this one. He he needs the Legion Guards. Apparently I can't speak today, but yeah, you wanted Stinky set with guaranteed crits. You got that here. If you wanted to, for example, do what I was talking about the other day, with something like let's say you give them the Vulcanheim, you give them access to the sniper ghillie, as well as the sniper gloves and the sniper medal. Now he's able to throw this throw this battle axe at 718 power. So. So if you wanted to have a throwing axe master, as it were, if you wanted to do the same thing except with crits and with poison on your attacks, or just wanted specific wards, a lot of these crossbows have an extra ward on there, allowing you to double stack additional immunities. You've got that on there as well. If you wanted to run ogre on them, that's also potentially an option. Obviously they are the equipment specialists. They get access to just about everything. As the browser has another stroke in the background, I don't know what that's about, man. That is really frustrating, but I'm not going to redo it now. Let's see. What do we want to slap on here with this? You want to 1 HK this? Sure, why not? Here, what's looking fancy? This one's got a nice anti-people bonus and whatever else. Has a stop ward on there, and would basically carve off half the health of a unit and leave them without a finisher. Now, I should probably also mention, as far as this other equipment, or sets are nice, but they, again, have access to everything. So if you wanted cloaks to be able to dodge better, if you wanted to have leggings to not only dodge better, maybe get some of your unique movement options, maybe you wanted to again, have additional kind of movement options, or, like, let's say something like the Armored Hakama here would give you access to some deflect there. Or if you needed more parry, you've got that off of your helmets. Or if you wanted either one of those, you've got those off of your shields. There's a ton of tools as far as all these weapons go. And bear in mind, some of them are even just funny hee-hee-ha-ha options. Like the Sekem here is going to be a parrying shield that's equipable as a main hand fist weapon. Essentially being a punchable thing there. So you could potentially equip that and another shield at the same time, and now you are a fist specialist that's also dual shielding. Let's say you also wanted to instead go for, double hee-hee-ha-ha shields and just equip the Captain America shield. Why not? That's in here somewhere. Yeah, the Chimeria's Fist. I believe this is in one of the temples at this point. Yeah, a lot of stuff has changed. I'm still relearning where stuff is these days. But, if you wanted to have a shield that you can throw as a weapon that also gives you stun and steadfast and parry and all of that, you've got that there. Funnily enough, it can't use its own bonus, but the Sekem, I believe, can use the parry bonus. So, it's seemingly the one way that shields can use the parry bonus. I don't even know if I want to be corrected on that, because I just love that idea is there. Anyway, let's see. If you wanted to, let's say, have Mind Blast, the Archon Helm allows you to essentially just guaranteed pushback at long range with your mind. If you wanted to have grappling options over on your soldier guy here, you've got stuff like the Bracer Hook, allowing you to go and just essentially ignore terrain, so that's always nice. If you wanted to have Opportunist without a slot, you've got that on your Scout Gloves. There's a lot of equipment, okay? There's a lot of equipment for a lot of different things, and this is why I would recommend always keeping at least one soldier around, because you can turn them into just about anything. Okay, sorry for the random coughing fit there. Anyway, so outside of wearing dresses, apparently, they get access to almost all equipment types. This means you can mix and match things that most other units can't. So it's not necessarily just about the skills that they can learn, but potentially a lot of these other options are great for them as well. I guess final note here, once they're completely maxed out, they do get access to Tactician 2 naturally, Max TP 2 naturally, Field Alch 1 still maxed out at rank 1, Jump is still maxed out at rank 1. Bear in mind, this will not stack with the bonus from the Scout Leggings, so just kind of pick one or the other there. As in, like, it won't suddenly turn into 2. That would have been neat, but I don't think the system can actually do that. And so, yeah, most of the stuff that they learn pretty early. By Chapter 4, they've already learned pretty much everything that you want them to, well, pretty much almost everything that they can have outside of their maxed out skills. But when it comes to their equipment, most of their progression comes from equipment. These weird mix and matches are what they're all about, and they don't have to be just about melee. Okay, so this one's a bit disjointed and crazy and a weird place to start, but I'm hoping y'all found it amusing. So, y'all have yourselves a good one. Thank you for sticking by the first episode of Know Your Unit for One Vision. I'm sorry this took such a long time to get to. Admittedly, this is probably the fourth or fifth time I've actually done this because as soon as I would start recording it, I would get halfway through, realize I forgot something, try and do it again, then get interrupted, then something happens, then I gotta, like kiddos get sick from school, and I gotta go pick them up, and then I get back, and then I forget, and then something else happens, and then the demo for Unicorn comes out, and then Unicorn itself comes out, and then it's like, I promised to start this months ago. What are we doing? So, yeah. Anyway. So, that's about that. Y'all have yourselves a good one. Thank you for stopping by. Oh, shoot. One thing I forgot to mention that I really should have. As far as there's obviously a lot of items here, but the Void Ring, it kind of looks like that one, Void item from RuneScape. Negative 20 weight. The only reason I'm mentioning this, the only reason I'm ending on this specific item, it is very uniquely useful to the warrior because of their vast amount of heavy equipment and potential means to land different debuffs. Oftentimes, they don't need power, they already have power, but speed is something that they can potentially lack, burdened under all of their equipment. So bear that in mind. Anyway, I gotta get going. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you next time.